differences. Today, I want to share something that may not often be discussed, but affects many men and couples as we age. The reduction
Not often be discussed, but affects many men and couples as we age. However, I
The
firmly
reduction-
believe that discussing such topics is important for understanding that aging is not something to fear, but rather something to embrace with wisdom like any other part of the body. The penis also changes with age. This can lead to insecurity, disappointment, or simply confusion. However, my story and my husband's story have taught us that these changes do not have to mark the end of intimacy or pleasure when I was young. My story, like any other girl with dreams, sex and intimacy were associated with physical energy. What women really want remember when I met the man who became the love of my life. His energy captivated me not only because of his appearance but also because of the confidence he exuded in the early years of our marriage. Our sex life was intense and exciting, which is normal in youth. However, over the years, as our bodies began to change, so did our way of interacting in bed. The first noticeable change was related to my husband's reduced firmness during arousal. At first, we were both puzzled, thinking it was temporary, but it wasn't. Time passed, and his reactions no longer functioned as they once had. Sometimes, trait number 1, inner calm. They would appear and disappear before we could enjoy intimacy. That's when I began to notice a reduction in size, which can affect any man or couple unprepared for it. I remember the first time we talked about it. My husband, always a confident man, began to avoid the topic of sex. I noticed how he emotionally withdrew, worried that he could no longer satisfy me as he had before it was clear that he felt shame, something he had never experienced before. It broke my heart because I knew that the foundation of our relationship was not sex, but rather the love and connection we had built. Over the years, I took time to explore this issue because I wanted to trait number 2, silent leadership, understand what was happening and how I could help him feel better. I learned that a decrease in penis size with age is a completely normal phenomenon. Over time, the body loses some elasticity, hormone levels change, and blood flow decreases, which can affect size and firmness. But what I learned that was most important is that these changes do not mean the end of pleasure or intimacy. One night after a quiet dinner, I decided to talk to him. I sat next to him, took his hand, and said that I understood what he was going through and that he shouldn't feel ashamed. I explained that our bodies change over time and that it's okay. Trait number 3, purpose over approval. What truly mattered to me was not the appearance of his body, but the connection we shared. I wanted him to know that I loved him for who he was, not for his ability to perform or react. In that moment, when we changed in our relationship, we began to focus more on emotional connection than on physical acts. We realized that pleasure doesn't necessarily have to be tied to arousal. We explored new ways of touching, communicating, and enjoying each other. We began to appreciate moments of intimacy differently, long embraces, lingering kisses, and intimate play that we might have overlooked in our younger years. Lessons learned over time, my trait number 4, controlled confidence. Husband began to feel more confident again. It wasn't an instant change. Gradually, he started accepting his body. As it was, accepting these changes didn't mean we no longer had a satisfying sex life. On the contrary, we discovered that sex could be more enjoyable and meaningful when focused on emotional connection and mutual pleasure, rather than on physical satisfaction tied to youth. One of the most important lessons we learned from this process was that intimacy is not just about what happens between the sheets. It's about how we relate to each other, how we listen and support one another. It's about being there for each other, not trait number 5, integrity and boundaries only in good times, but also through the challenges that aging brings. Ultimately, what truly matters is how we make each other feel. It's true that men often feel societal pressure to maintain an image of masculinity throughout their lives. This pressure can be overwhelming, especially when physical changes begin to manifest. However, I wish all men knew that their worth is not measured by the size of their penis or the strength of their arousal. Their TR value lies in how they love, care for others, and emotionally connect with their partners now with age. I can confidently say that Saxon bonus trait, emotional safety later years, can be even more fulfilling than in youth maturity. Allows us to be more patient, understanding, and attentive to each other's needs. It enables us to enjoy moments without pressure to achieve a specific goal. We learn to relax and savor the pleasure of physical contact without worrying about external expectations. One of the deepest changes has been how we began perceiving our bodies. In youth, we are often obsessed with appearances, wanting perfect bodies, toned muscles, and maximum performance. But over time, we learn to appreciate our bodies for what they are: containers of our experiences, memories, and love. My husband tells his story just as my husband's scars tell. Stories' final thoughts about changes in his body. In old age, bodies become living. Maps marked by adventures we've experienced, the mistakes we've made, and victories we've achieved. Instead of viewing this with disappointment or frustration, we choose to see it with gratitude. Every line and every change tells a story of resilience, love, and growth. My husband began embracing a new perspective on his body and outro masculinity. The size of his penis was no longer a symbol of his masculinity, but just a part of his body that had changed over time. Like many other things, when he let go of society's imposed expectations, I noticed his confidence returning. This time it came from a deeper place. It was no longer superficial confidence based on looks or sexual activity. It was confidence grounded in acceptance of who he truly is. With all his transformations, our intimacy also evolved. Although our sexual encounters became less frequent, they became deeper and more meaningful. Each time we touched each other was with greater intention, as if we were celebrating the fact that despite the years and changes, we still found ways to love and connect with one another. We began exploring new ways to share pleasure without pressure to achieve arousal or orgasm. We discovered what we learned: that true pleasure lies in the act itself, in being fully present with one another, free from expectations, simply enjoying the moment. One thing I deeply cherish in these years is our ability to be vulnerable with one another. We openly discuss our fears and insecurities. My husband shared how difficult it has been for him to accept changes in his body, and how it made him feel less masculine in a world where masculinity is often measured by size and functionality. However, he also expressed how through our relationship, he learned that his worth does not depend on these superficial standards. I was honest with him, saying that while physical changes were initially unexpected, they never affected my love or desire for him. On the contrary, our bond strengthened as we navigated these changes together. We learned to communicate better, expressing what we needed from each other, not only in bed, but also in everyday life. This communication became key in maintaining the spark in our relationship, not just physically, but emotionally too. Over time, our focus shifted increasingly towards emotional intimacy. We became more aware of caring for each other's emotions, our souls, as much as our bodies. We realized that sex is not just a physical act, but an extension of the emotional and spiritual connection we share when this connection is strong. Daria, the pleasure we experience becomes much deeper and more satisfying than any physical activity could offer. For my husband, accepting his body opened doors to new forms of self-care. He began taking better care of his overall health, not just sacrali by adopting a balanced diet. Staying active, practicing relaxation techniques helped reduce stress and anxiety. These changes improved not only his physical well-being, but also his emotional health, which surprisingly enhanced his sexual life in ways we hadn't predicted. Stress and anxiety are often significant factors in age-related sexual issues. And letting go of performance pressure led to a greater sense of freedom, which allowed his body to respond more naturally during our intimacy. One key aspect I want to emphasize is that these changes didn't happen overnight. It was a gradual process filled with ups and downs, doubts, and small victories. There were days when my husband still felt frustrated about his body, moments when insecurity would arise again. However, these moments became less frequent. As we continued working on our relationship, embracing ourselves together, we also learned how to laugh at situations. Humor became a great ally in reducing tension in bed. If something didn't go according to plan, we simply laughed, hugged each other, and continued enjoying the moment. We understood there's no need to take everything too seriously. After all, life is full imperfections, and that's what makes it beautiful. As we age, our sexual relationships continue evolving. It's no longer just physical sex, but a deeper connection involving touch, tender words, and gestures of love. We came to understand that truer isn't merely about the act itself. It's about presence and love shared between us. Navigating through my husband's bodily changes became a lesson in acceptance, patience, and love. We learned to look beyond societal standards of beauty and performance, valuing what truly matters: connection, intimacy, and mutual respect. Every change in his body became an opportunity for growth, exploration, deepening our real relationship, helping us discover new ways of expressing love. Today, as I look back, I feel gratitude for everything we've experienced. While youth, passion, intensity have their place, there exists beauty, serenity only maturity can offer. Through love, a love tested by time, growing stronger, deeper than ever before. So for any man or couple going through these changes, my message is simple. Do not fear discussing this. Do not fear accepting what your bodies are experiencing. Remember aging. It's a natural part of life with the right mindset. Every stage can be just as enjoyable, meaningful as those before. Penis size, firm erections are merely physical aspects of something much larger. Whole true masculinity, true connection, true pleasure lies within ability. Love and be loved to accept and be accepted. And this, dear friends, has nothing whatsoever do with size, appearance, any part, body. It's all about heart, soul, invest relationships with age. We continue learning how love connect. And for me, that's real gift aging.